Perfect. All right. So thank you for joining us all today for agroforestry across California. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about introducing agroforestry and agroforestry in California. Then we'll have Catherine hop on and talk a little bit about the California Agroforestry Network. And then I'm really excited for the last bit where Sean and Andrew will take it over to talk about the virtual case studies that we've been able to put together. But just to do a quick introduction of everybody who will be talking today. Um, my name is Annie Conchavoda. I work with the Natural Resource Conservation Services, and I am one of our agroforestry leads. We'll have Catherine speak following me. She is a ORISE Research Fellow with the National Agroforestry Center, and she is also the founding executive director for the California Agroforestry Network. Um, After that, Amy Quant will be talking. She is the Associate Professor of Environmental Geography at San Diego State University, and she is currently our California Agroforestry Network Board Chair. And then we'll have Andrew Tuttle, who is a farmer, designer, and lead developer for Edge Perma, um, who did really great work on these virtual case studies. And then we'll also get to hear from Sean, and he'll be talking about his farm and the virtual case study that we got to work on with him. So I'll be doing the introduction to agroforestry. We're going to talk a little bit about definitions and benefits. Then we'll go into some of the purposes and then the NRCS practices that we consider to be agroforestry practices. So first, starting off with defining what is agroforestry. Um, we consider agroforestry to be intentionally growing trees and shrubs in combination with crops, forage, or livestock. So that in combination is the big part right there. So you're not just doing trees, it's trees with an agricultural practice. Agroforestry has a lot of benefits, right? It can provide habitat value, it can increase your production. It has a lot of ecosystem services. And I think one of my favorite things is that it can improve resiliency on our farms, ranches, and forests. And it also helps diversify production. And that's something I think we're all eager to talk about as we move into the future. So another way of defining agroforestry is talking about what it's not. So it's not just conventional forestry, right? So it includes aspects of forestry, but it also includes equal or greater aspects of farming or livestock management. So it's really that combination. And so, the agroforestry tree component, it can be produced or it can be managed for traditional wood products, um, but it also can be managed for non-timber products, things like livestock benefits or even just conservation benefits. So it's not just, the traditional uh, Doug fir conifer stands that you think up in the Pacific Northwest. It can look like a variety of different things. Agroforestry is not a new concept. NRCS did not create this concept. Farmers, ranchers, indigenous people have been practicing this for hundreds of years. So I think it's important to acknowledge that while NRCS can talk about agroforestry, we're not the overarching lead on agroforestry. It's also not a single practice or land use, right? It's a combination of different practices and land uses. And it's not limited to the 5 NRCS practices that we'll be talking about shortly. So the NRCS practices that we've clearly defined as what we consider agroforestry practices are alley cropping, forest farming, windbreaks, silvopasture, riparian forest buffers, and then we also like to include the bonus hedgerows because that's a combination of shrubs and trees that is also can be considered an agroforestry practice. Um, when we think about the benefits that agroforestry provides from an NRCS perspective, we like to look at what we call SWAPA plus E, which is soil, water, air, plants, animals, energy. Those are the conservation benefits that we're looking at when we talk about agroforestry practices and conservation practices in general. And agroforestry addresses a lot of these resource concerns. For example, um, a riparian forest buffer that is going to have water quality benefits, right? Because it's collecting nutrients and sediments from getting into your streams, while it also provides wildlife habitat, right? So that's one practice that provides multiple benefits. You can also look at something like alley cropping, where, instead of leaving your soil bare in between, your orchards or your vineyards, you're putting in a crop. That's reducing soil erosion right there. So there's a variety of ways that agroforestry practices treat natural resource concerns, and they treat across the board, soil, water, air, plants, animals, energy. They're providing all these benefits. We also like to look at human considerations when we think about our environmental practices um, and conservation benefits. So, agroforestry can have can enhance your diversified production, right? So you're not just producing a single crop. Um, and when you're producing multiple crops in a smaller footprint, you can increase that production. It can also have cultural and societal benefits, um, right? Like hedgerows can provide pretty scenery for people, or you could plant, native plants within your riparian forest buffers that might have some cultural benefits. So there's lots of ways to meet that. And when you're enhancing your diversified production, you're also increasing access to fresh fruits and vegetables, which increases your food security. So these are just some of the ways that the trees work for the people. And now we're going to go a little deeper into the agroforestry practices. So that's again alley cropping, forest farming, windbreaks, silvopasture, riparian forest buffers, and then the bonus practice, hedgerows. Um, so going into alley cropping, what is that? Alley cropping is defined as, trees or shrubs that are planted in sets of single or multiple rows. And then in between those rows, you've got an agronomic, horticultural, or forages that you're producing in those alleys between the sets of woody plants, right? And so to look at that closer, an example of that could be, um, you've got your fruit tree, or these are neem trees. This is a cool example in Puerto Rico where they've got neem trees on either side, and then in the middle, they're growing dragon fruit. Um, and then on a urban or scale scenario example, you've got them producing a variety of different fruit trees on the sides. And then down the middle, they've got their mixed vegetable production. So it can look like a variety of different things. It could be in your orchards, it can be in your vineyards, it can be in your urban small garden. Um, and then the next practice is forest farming. Forest farming used to be called multi-story cropping, which I think gives you that visual for what we mean by forest farming. But essentially, it's managing or establishing stands of trees or shrubs in coordination with the management of understory plants or non-timber forest products. So it's that layering. It's the trees and the crops in combination. Um, and if you want to get even more into the weeds, you can also think about your forest floor, which is under that understory. So that's mushrooms or even herbs, stuff like that. And so I like to think of forest farming as either adding trees to your crop. So in this example, or these two different examples, this area was unforested before, and they had different shrubs that were fruit producing, and then they added trees in. And so they created a sense of forest farming here. Um, or you can add crop to your trees. So this was a scenario where they're in the active forest, and then they established a crop in their understory that was shade tolerant and did well in this type of environment. So I think it's kind of fun to think of it like that, adding trees to your crop or crop to your trees. Uh, One that is really popular for water bodies is riparian forest buffers. So this is a practice that you use adjacent to a water body. Um, and essentially, you're putting in grasses and trees along a water body that is going to capture sediment. So in this example here, uh, they had a pasture next to a stream, and so the cows had access to the stream, and that was causing all sorts of water quality issues. So they established uh, a dense set of grasses and then followed into that by trees. And so you've got the grasses that are catching that initial sediment, and then you've got the trees coming in that are providing shade for your streams and your aquatic habitat. So you're capturing that sediment and you're providing shade for the stream. As well as the woody debris that falls off the trees, that's going to be habitat for your aquatic species. So it's providing a variety of benefits here. And then you can see closely here that this is, the grasses that they have established on the edge of the pasture. That's capturing any of those, that waste that's coming off the field. Um, and then I think it's cool to kind of see the zoomed out picture of it, right? So before they cleared this, right, for agricultural purposes, there are all sorts of trees here. And before they put in the riparian forest buffer, the cows were getting all the way up into the stream. But now they've got that layer right before uh, the cows get to the stream. And so that's providing so many different benefits. And I think it's cool to see that zoomed out perspective of how much you're really having an impact on that water body, right? It's not just right there at that one source. It can be miles of water quality that you're impacting. Um, Silvopasture is another agroforestry practice, and this one is the establishment or management of desired trees, forests, forages, and livestock on the same unit of land. So you can think about silvopasture in a variety of different ways. So you can think of it as, silvopasture by addition, so adding trees to an existing pasture land. You can think about it as silvopasture by subtraction. That would be thinning your trees from forest land to increase that area for pasture and forage for livestock. And then one I'm sure Sean will be talking about later is orchard grazing, which is using livestock intermittently to accomplish management tasks in orchards and plantations. So this is from Sierra Orchards, but this is, they've got the sheep in the walnut orchards, and they're basically using the sheep to manage their cover crop that they're planting, which not only is, providing huge benefits to the trees, but they're also getting the sheep are benefiting, right? Because they're eating the forages. I think they've seen, pest management improvements, uh, improvement in weed suppression, soil health benefits, just a variety of different benefits from utilizing sheep in their orchards. And I think One of the things our orchard producers have issues with is what the cover cropping, right? They have a lot of issues with the management. I think it's pretty time consuming. Um, and so thinking about if you are going to think about using a cover crop, potentially using grazing as a way to offset some of that time. So just, um, and then we've got, windbreaks. And so windbreaks are uh, defined as establishing, enhancing, or uh, renovating windbreaks, are also known as belts, which is either a single row or multiple rows of trees or shrubs in a linear configuration. And so the overall goal of this is to protect your crop. So in an example here, we've got a hedgerow here that it's protecting this vineyard. And so it protects it from wind damage, frost damage. It can help reduce pesticide drift. And it also, if you're right up against a highway, can provide a reduction in noise pollution. And it just makes your farm look prettier, in my opinion. And then the last agroforestry practice I'll be talking about are hedgerows. And this is an establishment of dense vegetation in a linear design that achieves a natural resource conservation purpose. Super vague, but it provides at least one of the different conservation functions listed. I'm not going to read them all out to you because that's a lot, but a big thing that we do hedgerows for is establishing pollinator habitat, because it can be a good source for, you know, uh, pollen and nectar and nesting sites for our pollinators, which, hopping into this example, a lot of our almond orchards have a history of having to bring in bees, right? Because of all of the lost habitat over the years from agricultural practices. And we've had in some scenarios where producers have put in hedgerows and they are no longer needing to import their bees, right? They have the native habitat on their property, which is just really cool to see our conservation benefits in action, right? See the results of putting in these different practices. So, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Catherine, and she'll be talking about the California Agroforestry Network.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. Let me just see if I can share my screen. Um, all right. Can y'all see that? Okay. Hey everyone, so great to be here. As Annie said, my name's Catherine Favor. I'm an ORISE Fellow with the USDA National Agroforestry Center, and I'm also the founding executive director of the California Agroforestry Network. I'm here with Amy Quant. We're both going to be talking about opportunities for learning more about agroforestry in California through the work that Amy and I and Annie and Andrew, through the work that we're all doing as part of the California Agroforestry Network. Um, so I want to start. Annie gave an incredible introduction to agroforestry, uh, and talked about the 5 to 6 NRCS agroforestry practices with some amazing examples. And I just wanted to start out by showing a few other examples of agroforestry practices here in California. There's a lot of agroforestry happening here in California, and there's a lot of opportunity for it to be used more as well, to address some of the challenges that California farms are facing in specific. So I'm going to go through that, and then we'll dive into some opportunities and resources for learning more. Um, so as Annie mentioned, alley cropping, it can look a lot of different ways. So I wanted to just show an example that I thought was really interesting. This is an example of an alley cropping system in San Diego County. This is a coffee and avocado alley cropping system. So in this system, the avocado orchard was older and it started slowing down in production. And so what this farmer decided to do was to rip out every other row of avocados and plant coffee in its place. So you can see that here, that really just serves to diversify the system, increase the whole farm yield of the system, meaning increase the overall yield per acre. Um, and that's mostly because you have multiple layers of of vegetation, your vertical space is maximized. So the total yield of the farm can often go up in these kinds of systems. And then avocado trees are providing wind protection and partial shade to the coffee, which helps improve its quality. So this is really important, especially for farms that are dealing with high heat. It can be really, really beneficial. It can allow you to extend the growing season in some cases, or grow more specialty crops that might not otherwise thrive in high heat conditions. Another example, Annie talked about forest farming. And this can take so many different forms, but one example that I want to highlight is Coastal Roots Farm in Encinitas. I saw in the chat that someone works for Coastal Roots. I used to work there about 8 years ago. That's where I got started. So shout out to Coastal Roots. But they have an incredible food forest. This is a picture of their food forest. It's in the middle of an urban area. And you can see that there are different layers. There's an overstory layer of elderberry, pomegranates, and then there's a mid layer of all sorts of different types of crops, including lavender, and then ground cover like oregano and creeping rosemary. And I'm sure it's evolved a lot since I've been there. But one of the things I want to highlight about the potential for forest farming in the form of food forests, especially in urban areas, is that they can be used to both diversify food production and also improve conservation. So when I was working at Coastal Roots Farm, again, it's in the middle of an urban area, and we actually found a California gnatcatcher mating pair nesting in the food forest. So that was really incredible. At the time, the California gnatcatcher was threatened. And so finding a mating pair in the middle of a city was just amazing. And it just goes to show what you can do even in a small area. Annie talked about silvopasture and introduced orchard grazing, which is when you graze livestock in the context of an orchard. This definitely has to be done intentionally. Animals often can only be integrated into the system at certain times of the year in accordance with food safety standards. But animals can be really effective at grazing and reducing vegetative competition while also providing fertilizer to the system. And Annie also mentioned silvopasture by subtraction, which is when you can thin an overstory of trees and then integrate livestock in. So this second example is of a blue oak savanna silvopasture system at Bobcat Ranch in Yolo County. So in this system, the majority of the trees were already there. Some were thinned, some were replanted, and then cattle were allowed to graze in the understory, where they're protected from high heat, which allows them to produce more. Having a little bit of shade also extends the forage season, which can be really, really great, especially in California, where we so often deal with that really high heat in the summer. Windbreaks and hedgerows, as Annie mentioned, hedgerows can often attract so many pollinators that farmers don't have to import bees. And this is another prime example. This is a hedgerow at Terra Nova Ranch in Helm. And this is a hedgerow alongside an almond orchard. And they were able to attract so many bees that they no longer had to import bees to pollinate their almonds. So it really, agroforestry really can have practical implications, especially for the crops that we are growing here in California. Those are just a few examples. There are so many more diverse applications, but the take home is that agroforestry really can be used as a tool to address all sorts of different challenges and risks. And it is used nationally. This is a map of the inventory of agroforestry farms across the US. The USDA National Agroforestry Center analyzed data from the Census of Agriculture to get county level data about how many farms are using agroforestry. And as of 2022, there are just over 32,000 agroforestry farms in the US. And that translates to about 1.7% of all farms. So that might seem like a small number at first glance, but that's actually almost double the amount of certified organic farms in the country. So even though 1.7% seems like it might be a small number, it's actually pretty impactful. And even this is also, it's likely an undercount just because of the way the census is set up. It often excludes small farmers and forest landowners. So there is a lot of agroforestry happening, and there's likely even more. And in California in specific, there are just over 1,000 farms that report practicing at least one of the NRCS agroforestry conservation practices. And that translates to 1.5% of farms. The top five counties are Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, San Luis Obispo, and Humboldt. Um, so this is a lot, but California, as we know, largest agricultural state in the country, and we've got a lot of perennial production, and we've also got a lot of annual production. And yet integrating those two into one diversified and integrated system is still relatively uncommon. So I think there's a big opportunity to utilize agroforestry practices more in California in particular because we can grow it all. And so we can therefore integrate in a lot of innovative ways. Um, so one of the things that we found, we started the California Agroforestry Network about 2 years ago, and it was really born out of this observation that there is a lot of agroforestry in California. There's a lot of potential for agroforestry in California, and there's a lot of agroforestry research and experimentation that's being done, but in silos. A lot of people are researching things like hedgerows and alley cropping, but it's being done in isolation. And there's just a problem that people just don't know each other. We're not talking to each other. So it was about 2 years ago now that a group of us saw a need to just increase the coordination, communication, and information sharing among agroforestry practitioners and also partners, just to get the ball rolling and support more adoption. So, our network was born out of this need in early 2024, which I can't believe was already 2 years ago. So, we are doing a lot of great work, and Amy is going to talk a little bit more about exactly what we're doing and ways that you can get involved. So, I will turn it over to you, Amy.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, Amy Kwon at San Diego State University. And I was thinking it was more like 3 years instead of two, but time flies, I guess, when you're doing a lot of stuff. Great. So, as Catherine mentioned, we are the California Agroforestry Network, and there are different agroforestry networks around the country, but there really was nothing in California. So, we saw a huge need, as Catherine was saying, for all of this increased collaboration. So, our main goal is as a peer learning network dedicated to advancing agroforestry adoption. So basically just getting all the agroforestry nerds into one space and talking to each other. So we have, folks doing research, other folks that are more focused on education and training, and then this peer-to-peer learning. So just making sure that instead of working in our silos, we all know what everyone else is doing and can work more efficiently and more for the benefit of agroforestry in California. Yeah, we are very inclusive. We have all different types of people who are part of the network, and we welcome you all to join as well. I know we'll have a few slides about how to do that at the end. But we have federal employees, state employees, students, researchers like myself, farmers, obviously, and then just enthusiasts and curious minds. I like that bubble the best. Really, anyone who's interested in learning more about agroforestry, wants to implement agroforestry practices. Really, we run the gamut from all these different types of people who are just really interested in agroforestry in California. Awesome. So we have a few different work streams that we have. So we'll go through each of those. These are kind of the four major things that we do. The first probably 6 months or so, we were just all informally talking about what kind of work we wanted to do. And these are the four different types of activities that we landed on. So the biggest one is really the first one, communication and coordination, making sure that all the agroforestry folks are in the same room and talking to each other. We do this through a listserv that we have where people can announce different events or projects they're working on. And we also have bi-monthly meetings where everyone's welcome to come, introduce themselves, learn more about agroforestry. We have a research working team as well to coordinate research a bit more, as well as carry out any joint or collaborative research projects. Education and outreach, so to increase awareness of agroforestry throughout California, including something like this, right? Webinars, field days, things like that. And then kind of in tandem with education and outreach is demonstration sites. So trying to expand the network of demonstration sites around California that are really focused on farms with agroforestry, which is what we will be presenting at the end of this, right? We have a virtual demonstration, a virtual field visit.
So I can talk a little bit more about some of our peer-to-peer learning. Our bread and butter really is building relationships. So like Amy said, we meet virtually every other month. It can be super casual. We just come together and chat about agroforestry. We go around and share updates. And part of this includes our hosting our nutshell talks. These are just casual 10 to 15 minute webinars presented by our network members themselves on anything under the sun, any topic of interest. These are just a few examples of fun ones that we've had. We've had one about grazing and perennial crop systems in orchards, one about climate change adaptation in agroforestry in San Diego, and one about how the bay laurel nut, which is a California native, can be used to create a chocolate alternative. So there's always a really fun topic and a really great conversation after. We're also developing a specialist directory. So this is going to be a public-facing list of reliable resources, people who can serve as speakers, consultants, educators about agroforestry. We've also got an educational resources library. It's expanding by the day. If you go on our website, you can find all of our webinars there. We are also developing virtual farm tours that Andrew is going to do a deep dive on. And we have some written case studies coming down the pike. So lots of resources on our website. And then we also put on trainings. So last year we received a Western SARE grant to train agriculture and natural resource professionals on agroforestry. Right now we're doing this through virtual farm tours, which Andrew's going to be showing us, but we're also working with the National Association of Conservation Districts to host in-person trainings. We're starting with one in San Diego, but we're hopefully going to be expanding the model to every NRCS area region in California. So within the next few years, there will likely be a training near you. So if you stay in touch with us, you can stay posted on that. And then we do research webinars, which I'm going to let Amy talk a little bit more about research because she leads our research team.
Yeah, so the goal is also to get researchers together. So, kind of the first thing that we decided to do is not only just focus on California, but the West Coast more broadly and look at what are some of the most urgent research topics. So, we had reached out to natural resource professionals in all three states and wanted to know what are they hearing from the farmers, right? What are the most urgent and relevant needs to the West Coast, as well as training needs? Would they like more demonstration sites? What are kind of the training needs as well to help them teach farmers better how to adopt agroforestry? So that's one of the first things we've been working on, and we'll have a webinar about those results at some point later in the spring. But yeah, we're trying to kind of get a better read on agroforestry across the entire West Coast. So that's just one of the projects that we've been working on with the research. And then demonstration sites. We're working with the California Farm Demonstration Network to really try to get more agroforestry focused farms highlighted on their network. They have these great maps where you can search by all different types of things as far as different types of crops, conservation practices, to see what different examples exist out there to help folks implement agroforestry. We're also, as Catherine mentioned on our website, trying to get more agroforestry champions and more agroforestry experts that can just help, connect farmers to each other and learn from each other as far as agroforestry goes.
So again, one of the goals of this network is to have different people in different sectors interface. I just think when people with different experiences and perspectives come together to exchange knowledge organically, somehow magic happens. Everyone ends up learning, and there's just a synergy that occurs. So that's what our goal is. And that's why, as Amy said, we want to bring the entire ecosystem of agroforestry players together, and even just people who don't know anything about agroforestry but are interested and have those curious minds. So we really would encourage anyone who wants to learn more about agroforestry to join our network. I will also say CAF has played a really big role, so thank you for that. And so many amazing universities like San Diego State, which Amy's a part of. And we do have farmer participation as well, and definitely want to expand that more. So there is a place for you within our network. And if you do want to get involved, you can absolutely reach out to us. This is our email here. If you have any questions about agroforestry in California, just reach out and we can help connect you with technical assistance and resources to help you learn more. Um, and then if you want to get connected to our listserv and get on our email list and start getting calendar invites for our meetings, you can fill out a form that's on our website. This is our website right here, calagroforestry.org. Um, and with that, I will end it here. I think we have maybe 3 minutes for questions if there are any, and then we'll turn it over to Andrew. Um, I don't think I can see the chat. Are
All right,
there any questions?
there are a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
That are all really different. So Natalie asked, have you all considered including Indigenous agroforestry? And we do have representatives in our group from the Indigenous Agroforestry Network. And if you've never heard of that group, it's also another great group to get involved in. And they have a newsletter and an email that they send out. So we definitely are, yeah, they've been part of the network from the get-go. I don't know if you want to expand, Catherine.
I think you said it
Yeah,
great. Yeah, Indigenous
great.
Agroforestry Network. They're housed under EcoTrust, and I think if you just Google them, you'll find them, but they are an excellent resource.
Awesome. Yeah, there's also a question in the Q&A about have you seen these ATRA case studies on forest gardens from Coastal Roots Farm, which we already mentioned, and there is someone in
Yes,
the audience from Coastal Roots Farm.
I wrote those
Um,
ones back in my old life.
awesome. Yeah, but that's a great case study to share, and they have put the link in here, so that's really great.
Thank you.
Cool.
Any other questions? If
There's
not,
there's a
oh,
few others in the chat, but we should move on to the demonstration, and
okay.
we can always save time for any more questions at the end.
That's great. So now, yeah, I'll turn it over to Andrew Tuttle of Edge Perma. He's going to be walking us through some of the virtual farm tours that the California Agroforestry Network funded as part of our Western Sarah grant. Again, as I mentioned, one of the things that we're focusing on is outreach and education. We wanted to find just innovative ways to educate about agroforestry in California, what that can look like. So we hired Andrew to create these virtual farm tours for us, and I think they turned out incredible. So Andrew's actually going to walk us through those virtual farm tours right now. So I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Hi, all. I'm Andrew Tuttle. I'm a co-founder at Edge Perma. Thanks to Catherine, thanks to Annie and Amy. It's been a pleasure to get to work with you all on these projects, and it's been a pleasure to be a part of the network for the last couple of years. I'm on the steering committee at the Cal Agroforestry Network, and as Catherine was saying, it's just a lot of fun. So if you're thinking about joining, you should join because I've made a lot of really cool friends in the process of being a part of this amazing network. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Can you all see our website there? Yeah, good. Cool. So yeah, Edge Perma exists to solve the problem of most people will never step foot on a farm. Years ago, I saw this as the biggest problem in the world. I was teaching permaculture design at Edmonds College and the pandemic struck. I had to cancel all of these in-person farm learning experiences that I had lined up for my students. I was devastated by that. And I said, this isn't really going to work for me. What exists out there in the world is not the best it can be. And so, along with my co-founder, Mary Marshall, she and I set out on this mission 5 years ago to solve this problem. And what you see at edgeperma.com is our uh, case studies, our virtual case studies of regenerative farms across the United States. So what we do is we create 3D models and aerial panoramas and virtual walkthroughs of some of the leading regenerative farms across the country. But during the last couple of months, I have had the great privilege of getting to visit California and see some of the most amazing farms I've ever seen, including one that we're about to drop into in just a second. So it gives me a huge amount of excitement and enthusiasm to share with you all this recent project. And we're lucky to have joined with us today Sean McNamara, the farmer here at Sierra Orchards. So, Sean, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? And can you all see the farm there on the screen?
Yep.
Awesome. So, Sean, yeah, just getting to meet your family and getting to learn about your history of land stewardship, it's been incredibly inspiring for me. But I'd love for if you could share with the folks joining us today, what is it that we're looking at right now?
Yeah, Sean McNamara, my sister and I, and an amazing crew co-manage Sierra Orchards, which our parents started back in the 70s. It's about 400 acres of mostly orchards, walnuts, almonds, olives. We've dabbled in some other things. We had a chicken operation for a while. We do sheep. We do some custom farming for folks. Um, what we're looking at is a very special section of our farm that I'm sure we'll come back to us momentarily. A 40-acre piece that my family and my sister's family lives on, and that we're also so lucky to share with Toby Hastings, who started Free Spirit Farm 18 years ago. Very diversified, sweet things, um, stone fruits, berries, butternuts, a little bit of citrus, apples, pears, quince, um, sweet potatoes from time to time. So that's his zone back there where every row has a couple different things represented. There's also an amphitheater there. We were the host to the Center for Land-Based Learning for 25 years. So we had students come every morning for field days. So that amphitheater is where we hosted them. And there's about 15 acres of walnuts, 5 acres of kind of hay pasture in this picture, and interlaced with some mature plant hedgerows, a large solar array that is net metered, so offsets some of the biggest pumps on the farm. And just above Andrew's cursor there is a pretty cool little zone. It's a sediment trap, which this farm, a lot of this land used to be in kind of the traditional, conventional row crop rotation. So tomatoes being the biggest earner there, but also wheat, corn, melons, stuff like that. And we flood irrigated. There's you can see kind of a vein of Puta Creek in the background, which is our waterway and our watershed. Um, and yeah, we flood irrigated in that era. And in order to make sure that we weren't putting, polluted water back in the creek, we installed these large sediment trap settling ponds that are unlined. So they percolate back down to the aquifer as the sediments and in that time, conventional nutrients dropped out. Um, Now we actually use them for water banking, which is really cool. So high flows in the creek, we use kind of some of the same infrastructure to bring water into those ponds and just sink it down into the aquifer while maintaining this pretty cool, mature native plant and life ecosystem. Um, yeah, Andrew, what did I miss?
Oh, well, I can spin around over here and we could check out one of my favorite parts of the farm, and that is this incredible olive row. Do you
Oh,
want to talk
sure.
about that?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, again, we're lucky to have inherited many mature olive trees that were planted in the late 1800s, often as property line divisions or to line roads. So they're mission olives, which is kind of the California olive. They were brought over by Spanish missionaries, which is really freaky, and then kind of hybridized and became a landrace over here. Um, and they've got a very powerful grassy flavor. It's a really good oil to kind of convert someone into like fresh virgin olive, extra virgin olive oil to say like this is how much flavor we can pack into a tablespoon of oil. It's not as subtle as some of the Portuguese varieties that are really gaining popularity in California, but it's very fun. We harvest it every year, and yeah, we like to provide it.
Yeah, I was lucky to get a jug of olive oil on my way out, and I have converted quite a few folks into being huge olive oil lovers since trying that. It was absolutely delicious. But yeah, the time that we spent together was incredibly inspiring for me. And one of the things that really stood out was the sheep silvopasture systems. So
Mm.
if you're into it, let's dive in and drop down into the space. And if you want
Cool.
to share about what's going on here, but in the virtual case studies, you'll start in the 3D model, which we saw, and then you'll get to control the aerial panorama, which we're in. Then these little eye icons, you can click that to drop down to the ground level, where you get to see Sean's face again here. I'm gonna go ahead and mute that. I'm
Hey.
gonna just let this run and pause it on some of the shots from above as you describe what's going on site.
So cool. Um, it's kind of a rainy day, so it's nice to feel like I'm out there again. Um, and please, use the chat and the questionnaire or the question zone to kind of guide this conversation. I'm happy to talk about whatever you all, these participants, are interested in. Amazing group of people just looking through you. I'm daunted by the diversity and expertise in the room, so to speak, right now. Um, but yeah, and I think I'll say too that we started as a conventional farm back in the 70s and 80s, and my parents took us to organic because of a story that I just went to the regenerative tree nut field day at Burroughs Family Farms, which was amazing. So this story is becoming way more commonplace of basically kids growing up around really heavy ag chemicals, and it being, kind of a soul search for the farmers and the parents um, to be in a financial and a cultural system that farms this way and be raising young kids. And we're seeing, increased incident of cancer and all kinds of problems because of this farming system that we have. So, kind of the same thing. My brother and sister and I grew up in the very middle of our farm in a conventional orchard system using heavy chemicals. Didn't work for my parents, so they transitioned us into organic. Um, we're production agriculturalists. We carry a lot of debt and are in it to stay alive. Um, and I think any practices that we've arrived at are because they're best practices um, for us in our place in our crops. We also um, intend to be the best stewards possible of this place. So there are things like we have riparian buffers along Pewta Creek where we took out many acres of what would have been orchard, production orchard, and put in these riparian buffers, not because we have a erosion or sediment issue, but because the creek is already this kind of isolated artery of wildness and forage and habitat. So the riparian buffers vastly expand um, that artery. So the kind of the impact is much higher. But sheep are a great example of just a practice that works really well for our system. So when we converted to organic, I remember it in the early 90s. My dad started planting these big biomass cover crops, fava beans and the like, and they'd get 6 feet tall, and like as a little kid you get lost in them. Um, but then come October in walnuts, we shake those trees with a tree shaker. The walnuts fall to the ground, and then we need to be able to pick them up off the ground with machines. So we sweep them into a windrow, and then another machine that's pulls behind a tractor, PTO driven, picks them up. So you can't have 6 feet of vetch and fava beans and be trying to harvest a round thing off the ground at the same time. So it becomes an issue of incorporation. And in conventional ag, organic matter management is done by herbicide or tillage. And we're organic, so no herbicide. And then as we're learning more and more, tillage or cultivation or plowing or disking has negative impacts. Those being killing living roots, breaking up mycorrhizal networks, oxidizing things that you like that are in the soil into the air, and then compaction. The weight of the implement and the tractor do cause a compaction layer below. So for years we'd mow it. Basically, sheep solve a biomass issue, and many farmers, beyond all the other co-benefits, the fertility benefits, the integrated pest management benefits, the joy benefits, the diversified income benefits, and healthy sheep and healthy forage, they solve a biomass issue um, for us, which is how to grow diverse multi-species cover crops and get the most out of them as possible, because the sheep package, they eat where a mower can't, even where a weed eater can't, and then they package it up for you in their manure and their feces in these perfect fertility packets and give it back to you. So that's what got us onto the sheep. Yeah. Um, this is kind of late in the year, and my sheep, or most of my sheep, are at a different location. So I just have a little herd of 25, a little flock of 25 here. Um, we run like 450 ewes um, who lamb in they just lamb, so February, so that they're on, so that those lambs are coming up to weight as the grasses and forages are launching off. So, there's about 1,000 animals out there right now.
Yeah, Sean, so what are some of the biggest challenges with integrating sheep into silvopasture
Hmm.
systems in your region?
Whew. Um, yeah. Um, I mean, animal agriculture is a different game. There really are no days off. Um, the learning curve was really steep for me. Um, Mostly about health and kind of the like animal health, and the how to protect their health, and then kind of like, yeah, the kind of genetic management of the herd. Like, you have to be really thoughtfully managing your animals and their reproduction and their genetics, in order to kind of customize that group for your system. Um, but yeah, it's a big upfront investment as well. Um, we started with 200 ewes, um, and what did I pay for them? Basically, I paid 250 a piece, so that's $50,000 in animals, and another 5,000 at least, no, 10,000 probably in net fence, energizers, various vet gear, a trailer to move them around, and on and on and on. So there's a big cost, there's a big learning curve. I think now that I'm running my wheels here, the biggest one is that on my farm at least, I can't host the volume of sheep that I have out there now and that I need. I can't host year round. I don't have enough, hill land or dedicated pasture to host that many animals. And I saw someone in the chat, I believe, asked a question about kind of food safety, not so much with respect to animals, but that's a good question. And I can't speak to it, but I'm sure one of the people here can. But food safety was a big concern on the sheep for us. We worked a lot with our processor to come up with their interpretation of the pre-harvest interval. So that means that, how many days do your animals need to be out of the orchards in our case before harvest? Some people thought it was, 365 days. Some people thought it was 120 days, other people 90 days, other people 60 days. So we came up with a 90-day pre-harvest interval. Um, and oh yeah, so that puts us like July 1, the sheep are out of our orchards. So July 1 through early January, I've got to find other forage for my sheep. And it gets really expensive when you pay for it. So that means managing animals, not on your property or in a different place, for 6 months out of the year. So that is, that's a whole nother job, and it takes you off the farm, and yeah, it's intense.
Awesome. Yeah, when I was on site, we talked a lot about ways you could incentivize contract grazers. Do you want to talk a bit about that and maybe some of the pro tips you have as far as forages and things like that?
Sure, yeah. Um, yeah, so we bought into sheep 6 years ago. We started working with sheep with contract grazers 6 or 7 years before that. And I'm very close with a lot of grazers. They provide an amazing service to California land and soil and land managers. They're catching on, but there are not enough grazers or sheep. The sheep industry as a whole is kind of suffering, but there's not enough grazers to meet the demand for them in California. Um, so what we found though was that we wanted more control of the grazing element of the system. So we wanted more control of when the sheep got here, the rate of graze, so how quickly they move through different forages in the orchards. Because when they get here, a cover crop might be 18 inches tall, and in the last paddocks they're getting to in their rotation, it might be 4 feet tall. So, and some things are getting woody, and so really different. Really, there's a lot of kind of feedback from the system, but it's a really varied landscape. Um, so we wanted, yeah, control of when they got here, how quickly they moved through, and then when they left. That was important. And how many times they graze. We try to get two grazings of the entire farm in one kind of grazing season. Um, and that led the decision for us to get into our own sheep, which, yeah, jury's still out on whether we can hack it. It's very hard. It has not made much money. It's added a lot of intensity and complexity to our operation. Um, so, with grazers though, they work really hard. The gains are not huge. Um, I think getting to know the grazers in your area, building a relationship over time, setting kind of realistic expectations, like animal sheep don't know uh, the calendar. They don't know dates. Like if you want the sheep there February 15th, like the grazer will do their best, but it's really is a lot of it is out of their control. So kind of setting those expectations, getting clear on what your goals are, what the grazer's goals are, and what the middle ground is. And then, yeah, figuring out if they've got a hole in their schedule, if you can plant or orient toward crops that can be grazed in the time of year where they need feed. Like no shepherd needs feed in March. There's just too much feed in the state. But a lot of them need feed in September. So if you can, irrigate things or find a hole, or just make sure that what you're offering in March is really good. So a cover crop that has good forage in it and comes up well. If you're a small operation, I think getting together with other operations and kind of ganging yourselves and saying like, hey, let's work together to talk to this shepherd so that they have to do less movement of their animals from spot to spot. They can walk them, say, down the road or through, a neighbor's land. Moving sheep is very expensive. So the more you can incentivize, the more acres you can graze in one spot, the better usually.
Definitely. Yeah, Sean, well, I've been incredibly inspired by the work of your family. In fact, I want to share a quick story. I was staying at a hotel just nearby in Winters, California, when I was here doing all this documentation. And I was editing video of your farm at the hotel.
Mhm.
And the woman that was working there, I stopped by with my computer to show her a shot of your farm, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful." It was a shot of your donkey. And she says, "You really need to meet the McNamara's. They're doing some of the best farming in the area." And I was like,
That's awesome.
that's this farm. That's the one that I'm showing you. So that was one of the coolest moments of my trip down there.
Oh my gosh. I appreciate you telling me that. She's not on
Yeah.
my payroll.
But yeah, I'd love to take a moment. Are there any questions that have come up? I can't see the Q&A chat, but for anybody that can, is there any questions that have come up for Sean?
Yeah, there's one in the Q&A chat. I can chime in. So Maria's asking, are sheep and other grazers for agroforestry able to be used for meat?
Definitely. I think the vast majority of them are. True contract grazers are a little less focused on kind of meat quality than your kind of more traditional lamb producers, because the economics of their operation are such that they get more money from just having mouths to graze on contract land than they do for through meat sales. Meat sales of lamb in this country are not super strong. Um, but yeah, I mean, all the animals go to meat at some point. And in my operation, I was very interested since I'm not doing much contract grazing. I don't have that income source. My goal is to produce very high quality, finished lambs at a year to 14 months old, which we do. Yeah. And then there's one that I can touch on quickly on the chat. How actively do you need to manage the sheep and how do you mitigate predation risks? Um, that depends. We manage them very actively by using electric net fence, which is right there. Yeah, that's like 42-inch quick ground fencing. It comes in 160-foot rolls. You can make a paddock very quickly, and break it down quickly, and um, and so for me, I can get those really really hot with a battery and energizers. And we do have lots of bobcats. We have mountain lions. We have coyotes. I don't really have a problem with predation here, but when you start getting into the hills, yeah, you definitely, and it's especially like the Sierra foothills, you definitely have big predation issues. And most people manage them with the white dogs, with Anatolians and livestock guardian dogs. Um, my donkeys there are just my pets, but donkeys do hate dogs and coyotes, so they can make good guardian animals. But those guys really are just my friends. And then I think stocking density in the regenerative grazing world, stocking density is everything. So like how many head per acre can change daily, can change paddock to paddock, because no, the forage is always changing. The weather's always changing. Yeah. So certainly, if you come to a property that is really well fenced with like barbed wire or mesh fence all the way around it, you could, in theory, just kind of let the sheep go. That's a whole grazing world of thought to get into. Um, I think something I'd be interested in trying. I have some county roads around the farm, so I really have to keep animals off the roads. It's a huge safety and liability issue. Um, but if I was, further back from roads, I would be interested in kind of pushing sheep like the Allen Savory way, pushing sheep in a circuit every day. So take, 200 sheep and have a night pen and then do like a 200-acre circuit every day, probably using dogs or people to kind of keep them bunched. Um, if we're growing 10 things in a cover crop, it'd be really cool to see what other like feedback or loops we can get from the system. Like they definitely eat certain things first, maybe all the way. So you might be able to get some special cover crop reseeding. You might be able to get some different kind of elevations of it. I don't know. It'd be interesting, but I don't do that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to move into a couple last things and then hopefully we'll be able to circle back for another question or two. But
Okay.
real quick, I want to show the rest of the resources that we have for you at Sierra Orchards within this virtual case study. So as you all saw a minute ago, there was a video of Sean talking about the silvopasture systems, but there's also this really amazing video of Emily talking about the hedgerows, the California native hedgerows that they integrate throughout Sierra orchards as a part of their IPM systems. So once this project goes live in about a month or so, and that's going to get sent out through the Cal Agroforestry Network. So please sign up for those newsletters there because you'll have access to these resources. We really want to get this out there to the people across California to show them the great work that you all are doing as stewards of this land and all of the innovative practices that you're applying here. So there's this video as well as one about Toby and Free Spirit Farm right over here. So just wanted to
Awesome.
share these really quick to let folks know that, again, this resource is coming soon. But before we wrap up for today, I have another farm that we're going to drop into for just a couple of moments and show you all another site in California, and that is Alexander Family Farm. So I'm going to drop out of this and pull up the next one. So at Sierra Orchards, the focus was really on the silvopasture systems, the California native hedgerows, and the diversified orchard of Free Spirit Farm. But here at Alexander Family Farms, the focus was on their riparian buffers. So as we're spinning around this 3D model here, we're going to get to see some of their Sitka spruce is the predominant species that they're planting along their waterways, all on this farm here. And you can see this planting is about 20 to 30 years old, right in that range. And so again, with all of these virtual case studies, we're starting with a 3D model, but from there you can stop that and drop into the aerial panorama and get about a 200-foot view of the farm, just like we saw at Sierra Orchards a minute ago. But here you can get a close-up of what this riparian buffer looks like at Alexander Family Farms. And so this is just another one of those resources that we're building in collaboration with Cal Agroforestry. And these were all funded by a Western SARE grant. And I wanted to give Amy a shout out for all of the work through San Diego State University to coordinate the grant as well. But these are the kinds of projects that we're going to be working on with the network to just make resources on how to fast track the establishment of agroforestry systems by providing farmers throughout the state of California and beyond resources on how to replicate these complex systems that we have here. This is just a before picture, and this is what it looks like about 25 years later. So just wanted to show this regeneration in action on this 9,000 acre regenerative dairy farm. But just like at the last farm where we were at, you can drop down to the ground level and watch a video of Blake Alexander talking about the different systems that they have here in place on this site. So yeah, like I said, these sorts of resources are what we're collaborating a ton on with the network, and we're really excited to keep coming back down to California to feature some of these really innovative farms throughout the state and to continue to create these virtual case studies that will be freely accessible to anybody on this call, anybody in the network, and anyone outside of the network will have access to these to learn more about Sierra Orchards and all of these other great sites in California at calagroforestry.com, which I am going to share the screen of that real quick. So that's the website, calagroforestry.org. We do have a few more minutes to open it up for questions, and that can be questions to me about virtual case studies, Sean about all the amazing work they're doing at Sierra Orchards, any of the team that spoke earlier, Annie, Amy, and Catherine. If you have questions for anyone here, please throw those out to us. We'd love to spend a couple of minutes answering those before wrapping up the session for today. See, does anybody see any in the chat? I can't see it again. Okay.
No questions coming up that I see, but I did just want to shout out, I did put the form directly into the chat where you can sign up for the network. And on that form, we have different kind of activities that you can sign up for. So you can sign up to be part of our general meetings where we just meet, hang out, chat really informally about agroforestry. You can also sign up specifically to be part of Amy's research team, or our demonstration sites team, or our education and outreach team. And then I'm also going to put the link to the California Farm Demonstration Network website So if you are a farmer and you have a farm that you'd like to put on the California Farm Demonstration map, we're working really closely with them to highlight agroforestry farms, but also just farms of all types. Um, so I'm going to put that link in the chat as well. And if you do have a farm that you'd like to get on the map, you can just fill out their brief form.
Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions that are coming up, I suppose we could close this out. But I first wanted to say thank you so much to the McNamara family. Honestly, like just getting to be there on the land with you, experience regeneration in action, see the systems you're developing, see your passions, see your hearts, and see this family commitment to land stewardship was honestly just like one of the most powerful moments of my life to get to share that with you all. So it's truly an honor to be able to go and visit to video that to help tell your story. It's truly like one of the greatest honors. So thanks so
Oh,
much, Sean.
thank you so much, Andrew. Keeps us going.
Yeah, awesome. Well, one more time, we'll just one more plug for the Cal Agroforestry Network. We have a lot of fun at all these meetings we get together. We get to talk all things agroforestry related. It's just like Catherine said earlier, it's just a bunch of plant nerds getting together, talking about how we can plant more trees all across the state of California. And it's a lot of fun. So please join us there. Thank you so much um, to the Small Farm Conference for bringing us on to give us this chance to share about these resources. This has been a great time. We'll see you all later.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much for being here.